The second half of your questions today require you to research and compare and contrast. We're going to research the different ways that the elderly are treated in different countries. And we are going to compare and contrast those ways of handling their elderly with Jonas's community. So the research portion of this task is we are going to read about a few different countries. Let's start with South Korea. Not only do Koreans respect the elderly, but they also celebrate them. For Koreans, the 60th and 70th birthdays are prominent life events, which are commemorated with large-scale family parties and feasts. As in Chinese culture, the universal expectation in Korea is that roles reverse once parents age, and that it is an adult child's duty, and an honorable one at that, to care for his or her parents. So let's break this down. What does that mean? Well, think about your own grandparents. Okay, they would be considered the elderly, although probably some of your grandparents are not that old. In their 60th and 70th birthdays are big deals in South Korea. And let's see, they consider that when they reach this age, that the parents, or not, like your parents, should begin to care for your grandparents. Okay, so it reverses once they get older. The kids begin to take care of their parents. And that's similar to what we do here in the United States. Japan. Like the Chinese and the Koreans, the Japanese prize filial piety and expect children to dutifully tend to their parents. But Japan also faces the unique problem of tending to an increasingly elderly population. According to social gerontology, a multidisciplinary perspective, 7.2% of the Japanese population will be 80 or older in 2020, compared to 4.1% in the US, which will likely lead to a host of new problems for the country. Adult diapers are already outselling baby diapers, and the pension system is on course to dry up. This is a serious situation. In Japan, a very large percentage of people will be over the age of 80 by next year. Okay, that's what they're saying here. But much like South Korea, okay, you are expected to take care of your parents when they become old. All right, let's take a look at the USA and the UK. Western cultures tend to be youth-centric, emphasizing attributes like individualism and independence. This relates back to the Protestant work ethic, which ties an individual's value to his or her ability to work, something that diminishes in old age. So it goes down. Your ability to be able to work diminishes. It goes down. Anthropologist Jared Diamond, who has studied the treatment of the elderly across cultures, has said the geriatric, that means old, in countries like the UK and US live lonely lives separated from their children and lifelong friends. As their health deteriorates, the elderly in these cultures often move to retirement communities, assisted living facilities, and nursing homes. So the majority of the people in the US, as they age, they're either, again, think of your own grandparents or even your great-grandparents, they either live in their homes alone, okay, lonely lives, not with their children for the most part, or they go to nursing homes or retirement communities. So more or less, in our culture, we're not completely expected to take care of our elderly. Although I think that depends on family to family. I know in my family, we are kind of expected to take care of our parents. On the other hand, just for an example, my father is an older man, and he does live alone, and so I could see why independence is very much valued in the USA. All right, let's check out France. It's difficult to imagine such an elderly rights law being a legislative priority in many Western cultures. France did, however, pass a similar decree in 2004. This is Article 207 of the Civil Code, requiring its citizens to keep in touch with their geriatric parents. It was only enacted following two disturbing events, though. One was the publication of statistics revealing France had the highest rate of pensioner suicides in Europe, and the other was the aftermath of a heat wave that killed 15,000 people, and most of them were elderly. So in France, there's actually a law that they passed in 2004 that says if your parents live alone independently, you are required to keep in touch with them. And that's because of these two major events that happened. France had a very high rate of old people committing suicide, and there was a massive heat wave, very hot weather for an extended period of time that killed 15,000 people. And most of them were elderly who had no one checking up on them. So, one more for you. Let's take a look at the Mediterranean or Latin cultures. Mediterranean and Latin cultures place similar priority on the family. In both cultures, it's commonplace for multiple generations to live under one roof, sharing a home and all the duties that come with maintaining one. In the contemporary iteration of this living arrangement, the oldest generation often is relied on to assist with caring for the youngest, while the breadwinners labor outside the home. As such, the aged remain thoroughly integrated well into their last days. So, in this culture, and this might be true for some of your families, rather than a grandparent living in their own home or a grandparent going to a nursing home, everybody lives together. So you've got grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, all the kids, and the older people, the grandparents, help raise the children while the parents go to work. So this is a very common way of living for these two cultures. So you have this. You have the French, who the grandparents live alone, but they're required to keep in touch with them. You have the USA, where our older people either live alone or go to a retirement community or a nursing home. We have Japan and South Korea, who value and respect the elderly, and it's almost a requirement for them to care for their parents when they're older. So these are the different ways different cultures value the elderly. Now, your job is to go back to your Google Classroom and answer this question. It says, watch the video explaining the elderly population in various countries. You just did that. Explain how these cultures differ and how they treat their elderly compared to Jonas's community. This question requires complete sentences. Remember to use POW and TIED when responding to these types of questions. So this is like an essay that you need to be writing, okay? So remember to set this up correctly when you're doing your work, all right? If I were you, I would start right away with that P and plan and do your do what, okay? And your do would be explain how these cultures differ and how they treat their elderly compared to Jonas's community. So you're going to talk about, you're going to go right into your organization, your TIED. topic sentence, okay, your information, your details, and your ending. Okay, you're explaining yourself. You're completely comparing the different cultures and how they relate to Jonas's community. Now remember, we just finished reading this. In Jonas's community, okay, where do the elderly go? When you're old and you're done working, where does everybody go? Okay? Everybody goes to the house of the old, right? And when you reach a certain age in the house of the old, you are celebrated and you are released from the community. Remember, you're taking what Jonas's community does and comparing it to what some other cultures do for their elderly.